Immigration and Customs Enforcement, open this door immediately.
Can I help you, officer?
We have intelligence that there's an undocumented minor on this vehicle.
Federal agents, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, open this door immediately. The voice exploded through a megaphone, cutting across highway noise and idling engines. Inside the yellow school bus, 42 children froze mid-conversation. Mr. Raymond Jones looked in his side mirror and saw black SUVs blocking both lanes, armed agents in tactical vests approaching from either side. "Can I help you, officer?" His voice came through the intercom speaker mounted outside the bus, calm and measured despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "We have intelligence that there's an undocumented minor on this vehicle. We need immediate access to verify identity and execute detention." Mr. Jones glanced at the faces behind him in the rearview mirror. 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, children who had been laughing about homework and weekend plans 60 seconds ago, now staring at men with guns surrounding their bus on Interstate 35. "I'm going to need to see a warrant before I let anyone board." What followed was a 6-minute standoff that would end with federal charges, a packed courtroom, and a revelation that would force everyone to reconsider what they thought they knew about the invisible man who had driven Route 12 for 14 years. If you are ready to see institutional racism taken down, like this video and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now because you won't want to miss tomorrow's story of cops messing with the wrong people and finding out. Let's continue. Lead Agent Marcus Garrett had been with Immigration and Customs Enforcement for 11 years. He approached the bus with the confidence of someone who had executed dozens of detentions, someone accustomed to compliance, someone who had never been told no by a school bus driver. He pounded on the folding doors with his fist. "This is not a request. This is a federal immigration enforcement action. Open these doors now or you will be charged with obstruction." The intercom crackled. "I have 42 children on this bus. Their safety is my responsibility. Show me a warrant signed by a judge and I'll open the door." Garrett's face flushed red. He turned to the agent beside him, exchanged words too quiet for the microphone to catch, then raised the megaphone again. "We don't need a warrant for administrative immigration enforcement. This is deportation protocol. Open the door." "Then I guess we have a problem." Inside the bus, the atmosphere had shifted from confusion to fear. A girl in the second row started crying audibly. A boy near the middle pulled his phone from his backpack and held it up, recording the agents outside. 3 more children did the same within seconds. Mr. Jones kept his hands visible on the steering wheel. His eyes moved between the side mirrors, the rearview mirror, the dash camera he had installed 6 months earlier, and the overhead security camera the district had mounted after a parent complaint about bullying. Everything was being recorded. Every word, every action, every threat. Garrett moved closer to the door, his voice rising with each sentence. "You are interfering with a lawful federal operation. That is a felony. Do you understand what that means? Prison time, loss of your license, loss of your pension, all because you decided to play hero." Mr. Jones' voice remained steady through the intercom. "I'm not playing anything. I'm doing my job, which is keeping these children safe. You want on this bus? Show me legal authorization." Another agent approached with a tablet, showing Garrett something on the screen. Garrett nodded, then raised the megaphone again. "We have intelligence that passenger number 27, seated in row 8, is an undocumented minor subject to immediate detention under federal immigration authority. You are harboring a fugitive." Mr. Jones glanced in the rearview mirror. Row 8, the quiet boy, Miguel Reyes, 10 years old, perfect attendance, never caused trouble, always said thank you when he got off at his stop. That child is 10 years old and under my care. You're not taking anyone off this bus without proper documentation. Garrett slammed both fists against the door. The boom echoed through the bus. Several children screamed. A girl near the front started hyperventilating. "You've got 30 seconds to open this door or we're breaching it. 30 seconds. Then we're coming through whether you like it or not. Mr. Jones' hand moved to the control panel. His finger hovered over the master lock button, a system designed to seal all doors and windows in case of emergency, preventing unauthorized entry while keeping passengers secure inside. He pressed it. The pneumatic system engaged with a sharp hiss. Every door locked with synchronized mechanical clicks that sounded like a vault ceiling. The emergency windows locked. The roof hatches secured. The bus was sealed. Garrett stared at the door in disbelief. Then his face contorted with rage. You just assaulted a federal officer. You just committed battery on federal agents by locking us out. I locked a door. No one touched you. Refusing a lawful order is assault under federal code. Show me the warrant. Traffic had backed up for half a mile in both directions. At least 30 cars had stopped on the shoulder, passengers out with phones raised. 2 news helicopters circled overhead, cameras rolling. A highway patrol car arrived, the trooper stepping out and immediately pulling his radio to request supervisor presence. Garrett keyed his radio. Dispatch, we have an active obstruction situation. Driver has sealed the vehicle and refuses compliance with federal detention orders. Requesting supervisor and legal authorization for forced entry. The radio crackled back. Stand by for legal review. Do not breach without authorization. Repeat. Do not breach without supervisor clearance. Garrett looked like he might crush the radio in his hand. Instead, he turned back to the bus, megaphone raised. Michael Raymond Jones. We know your name. We know your route. We know your address. When we get through those doors, and we will get through, you're going straight to federal detention. You'll lose everything. Inside the bus, Miguel Reyes sat frozen in row 8, backpack clutched to his chest, tears streaming down his face. The girl next to him, Emma Chun, reached over and held his hand without saying anything. Mr. Jones kept his eyes on the mirrors, kept his hands visible, kept his voice calm when he spoke through the intercom again. I've been driving this route for 14 years. I've never lost a child. I've never let harm come to anyone on my bus. And I'm not starting today. You want Miguel? You get a warrant. Until then, these doors stay closed. An agent appeared with a tactical entry tool, a hydraulic device designed to force open secured doors. He positioned it against the folding mechanism and looked to Garrett for approval. Garrett checked his watch. 4 minutes had passed since they stopped the bus. 4 minutes of standoff. 4 minutes of a school bus driver defying federal authority while cameras captured everything. His radio crackled again. Agent Garrett, legal advises extreme caution. Media presence is significant. Recommends secondary approach through school administration and family services, rather than forced breach of vehicle containing minors. Garrett killed the radio volume and made a decision that would define everything that followed. He gave the nod. The entry tool sparked to life. Hydraulic pressure built. The folding doors groaned under the force. Children screamed. Mr. Jones remained motionless in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, eyes forward, as the doors finally gave way with a metallic shriek. Agents poured into the bus. Hands grabbed him from behind. Metal restraints clicked around his wrists. Garrett leaned close as they pulled Mr. Jones from his seat. I hope it was worth it. Mr. Jones said nothing as they led him past 42 crying children, past Miguel Reyes being separated from the group by another agent, past the cameras recording everything, down the bus steps and toward an unmarked vehicle. Behind him, parents were arriving at the scene, flooding past the barricades. Emma Chen's mother was screaming at agents. Miguel's aunt was being held back by highway patrol. The video was already climbing past 10 million views across 3 platforms. The standoff was over. But Mr. Raymond Jones, the invisible bus driver everyone had overlooked for 14 years, had just done something that would force the world to finally pay attention. And what they would discover in a federal courtroom 3 weeks later would make every agent involved wish they had never stopped that bus. The flashing lights had appeared in Mr. Raymond Jones' rearview mirror at exactly 3:47 p.m., and within 90 seconds, His world had narrowed to a single impossible choice. Open the doors or protect the children. He chose the children. The two black SUVs had materialized from nowhere, closing in from both sides with the precision of a tactical maneuver. No sirens. No warning. Just flashing blue and red lights reflecting off chrome and glass as they forced the yellow school bus toward the shoulder of Interstate 35. Mr. Jones had eased the bus onto the gravel without panic, his hands steady on the wheel despite his heart hammering against his ribs. Behind him, 42 voices went from chatter to confused silence as students registered the presence of armed men in tactical vests stepping out of unmarked vehicles. Traffic slowed immediately. Horns blared from impatient commuters who hadn't yet realized what was unfolding. Then phones began rising, dozens of them, held by drivers and passengers who sensed something worth recording. Within 2 minutes, the first news helicopter appeared overhead, rotors chopping through the afternoon air with mechanical urgency. Lead Agent Marcus Garrett moved toward the bus with the swagger of someone who had never been refused. He was 43, built like a linebacker, with the kind of face that suggested he enjoyed the intimidation factor of his job. He had executed 127 immigration detentions in his 11-year career. Most subjects complied within 60 seconds. The ones who didn't usually complied within 5 minutes once they understood the consequences of obstruction. He had never detained a subject from a school bus before. He pounded on the folding doors with his fist, the metallic boom carrying through the sealed interior. Children jumped in their seats. A girl in the front row started crying immediately. The intercom crackled to life. "Can I help you, officer?" The voice was calm. Too calm. Garrett hated calm. Calm meant someone thought they had options. He raised the megaphone. "Federal agents. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We have intelligence that there's an undocumented minor on this vehicle. We need immediate access to verify identity and execute detention." Inside the bus, Mr. Jones glanced at the faces in his rearview mirror. 42 children between the ages of 8 and 13. Some were texting parents. Some were recording. Some were frozen in confusion. And one, Miguel Reyes, row 8, seat by the window, had gone completely pale. Mr. Jones pressed the intercom button. "I'm going to need to see a warrant before I let anyone board this bus." Garrett's expression hardened. He turned to the agent beside him, Lopez, younger, less experienced, and exchanged words too quiet for the external microphone to capture. Then he raised the megaphone again. "This is not a warrant situation. This is administrative immigration enforcement. You are obstructing federal officers in the execution of their duties. I have 42 children on this bus. Their safety is my responsibility. Show me a warrant signed by a judge. You don't get to make that call, driver. Open these doors now or you're going to prison." Mr. Jones' hand moved to the master lock control panel, a safety feature installed 3 years ago after a district-wide security upgrade. One button. Every door and emergency exit sealed simultaneously, designed to prevent unauthorized entry during emergencies. His finger hovered over it. Not without proper legal authorization. Garrett's face flushed red. Authority challenged. Command refused. Ego bruised. "We don't need a warrant for immigration detention. This is federal law. Open the damn door. Then you're not getting on my bus." The fist came down hard against the door. The boom reverberated through the bus like a gunshot. Several children screamed. A boy near the back dropped his phone. Emma Chun, sitting next to Miguel in row 8, grabbed his hand instinctively. Outside, the scene was escalating beyond procedural norms. More cars had stopped. More phones were recording. A highway patrol cruiser arrived, the trooper stepping out and immediately radioing for backup after assessing the situation. The news helicopter descended lower, close enough that the rotor wash created visible ripples across the gravel shoulder. Garrett raised the megaphone, his voice climbing in volume and hostility. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Last chance. Open up or we're coming through." Mr. Jones pressed the button. The master lock engaged with a sharp pneumatic hiss. Every door sealed with synchronized mechanical clicks. The emergency windows locked. The roof hatches secured with magnetic bolts. The bus became a sealed environment. 42 children and one driver locked inside. Federal agents locked outside. Garrett stared at the door in disbelief. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You just assaulted a federal officer. The intercom crackled. I secured a vehicle under my care. No one was touched. No force was used against any person. Refusing a lawful order is obstruction. That's a felony. Show me the warrant and I'll unlock the door. Lopez stepped closer to Garrett, speaking quickly and quietly. Garrett waved him off, his attention fixed on the sealed bus, on the driver sitting calmly behind the wheel, on the children's faces pressed against windows. He keyed his radio. Dispatch, we have an active obstruction situation on Interstate 35, northbound mile marker 42. Driver has sealed the vehicle and refuses compliance with federal detention orders. Requesting supervisor and legal authorization for forced breach. The radio response came within seconds, the dispatcher's voice tight with concern. Stand by for legal review, Agent Garrett. Do not breach vehicle without authorization. Repeat. Do not breach without supervisor clearance. You are on an active highway with civilian witnesses and minor passengers present. Garrett looked at the radio like it had betrayed him. He turned back to the bus, megaphone raised, voice now carrying the edge of someone whose authority was slipping away in real time. Michael Raymond Jones. Driver's license Echo 5372941. Age 61. 14 years employment with Dallas Independent School District. We know everything about you. When we get through those doors, and we will get through, you're going straight to federal detention. You'll lose your license, your pension, everything. Inside the bus, children were crying openly now. Parents were calling their phones. Teachers were texting frantically. Miguel Reyes sat frozen in row 8, tears streaming down his face, backpack clutched to his chest like armor. Mr. Jones kept his eyes on the mirrors, kept his hands on the wheel, kept his breathing steady even though every instinct screamed at him to second-guess what he had just done. But he had made his choice. And in 3 weeks in a federal courthouse downtown, that choice would be vindicated in a way no one could have predicted. For now, though, he was simply a bus driver who had locked the doors and refused to let armed strangers take a child from his care. Garrett checked his watch. 5 minutes had passed. The standoff clock was ticking. Media presence was multiplying. His radio crackled again with increasing urgency from dispatch advising caution, advising secondary approach, advising legal review. He made a decision. He signaled to the agent with the tactical entry tool, a hydraulic device designed to force open secured doors without explosive breach. The agent positioned it against the folding mechanism, adjusted the pressure settings, and looked to Garrett for final authorization. Garrett gave the nod. The tool sparked to life. Hydraulic pressure built with a mechanical whine. The folding doors groaned under the force. Metal stressed. Seals strained. Children screamed. The doors gave way with a metallic shriek. Agents poured through the opening. Hands grabbed Mr. Jones from behind before he could move. Metal restraints clicked around his wrists. He was pulled from the driver's seat, lifted bodily from the bus, and marched down the steps toward an unmarked vehicle. As they led him past row 8, past Miguel being separated from Emma by another agent, past the crying children and recording phones, Garrett leaned close. I hope it was worth it. Mr. Jones said nothing. They placed him in the back of the SUV. The door slammed shut. Through the tinted window, he could see parents flooding the scene. See Miguel's aunt being restrained by highway patrol. See Emma Chen's mother screaming at agents. The video was already climbing toward 10 million views. The standoff was over. But the real story, the one involving a federal courtroom, a yellowed newspaper clipping, and a judge who would recognize the face of the man who had saved his life 20 years earlier, was just beginning. The unmarked SUV pulled away from the shoulder at 3:53 p.m., exactly 6 minutes after the lights had first appeared in Mr. Jones' rearview mirror. 6 minutes that had been captured by 17 different cameras, dash cams, body cams, civilian phones, news helicopters, and the bus's internal security system that had quietly uploaded every frame to the district's cloud server the moment the emergency lock engaged. Mr. Jones sat in the back seat, hands cuffed behind him, watching through tinted windows as parents flooded the scene. Miguel's aunt was being held back by 2 highway patrol officers, her voice carrying across 4 lanes of stopped traffic. Emma Chen's mother had made it past the barricades and was screaming directly at Agent Lopez, demanding to know why armed men had terrorized children over paperwork. The video was already climbing past 15 million views across 3 platforms. Clips were being shared faster than the agency could track them. Commentary was splitting into predictable camps, those who saw a hero protecting children, and those who saw obstruction of lawful federal authority. But the narrative Agent Garrett had tried to control on that highway was slipping away from him with each passing minute. Inside the SUV, Garrett turned from the passenger seat to look at Mr. Jones through the partition. "You know what you just did? You traumatized 42 children. You put them in danger. All because you wanted to play hero for the cameras." Mr. Jones said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence could not be twisted into confession. "You think you're going to walk away from this? You obstructed a federal immigration operation. That's a felony. 5 years minimum. And that's before we add endangerment charges for keeping those kids locked inside while we were forced to breach." The driver, a younger agent named Torres, glanced in the rearview mirror. He had seen the footage already. His wife had texted him the link 10 minutes ago with 3 angry emojis. He had watched a bus driver calmly asking for a warrant, while his supervisor screamed threats through a megaphone. He had watched children crying while agents forced open doors. He had watched something that looked less like law enforcement and more like an assault on a school field trip. He said nothing. Garrett continued, his voice rising with the desperation of someone whose decision was already being judged by millions. "You were protecting an illegal. A kid who doesn't belong here. You chose him over following lawful orders from federal agents." Mr. Jones kept his eyes forward, kept his breathing steady, kept his face neutral even though rage was building in his chest. Not at the accusation, but at the dehumanization of a 10-year-old child reduced to 2 words, illegal minor. "We could have been in and out in 2 minutes if you just opened the door. But you decided to be difficult. You decided to make this a spectacle. So now 42 kids are traumatized, and it's your fault." The SUV merged onto the interstate, heading south toward the federal building downtown. Traffic parted for them despite no sirens, drivers recognizing the unmarked vehicles and the weight of what they represented. Torres checked his mirror again. Mr. Jones sat completely still, hands behind his back, posture upright despite the discomfort. No fidgeting, no pleading, no attempt to justify or explain, just quiet endurance. Garrett's phone buzzed, then again, then continuously. He pulled it out and saw the notifications flooding his screen. Tags, mentions, direct messages. He opened one clip and immediately wished he hadn't. The video showed him slamming his fist against the bus door, showed him screaming through the megaphone, showed him giving the signal for forced breach while children's screams echoed in the background audio. The caption read, "This is what protecting children looks like?" With 14,000 shares in 20 minutes. He killed the screen and shoved the phone back in his pocket. "You're done," Garrett said, not looking back this time. "Your career is over. Your pension is gone. And you're going to prison. All because you couldn't follow simple instructions." Mr. Jones closed his eyes briefly. He thought about Miguel sitting in row 8, about Emma holding his hand, about the girl in the front who always said good morning, about the boy with autism whose routine he had memorized, about 14 years of mornings and afternoons, of laughter and tears, of children trusting him to get them home safely. He had made his choice, and he would make it again. Should federal agents be allowed to board a school bus without a judge-signed warrant? The question isn't academic when 42 children are watching armed men force open their only exit. Type your answer in the comments and explain why the law should or shouldn't require documentation before detention. The federal building's underground garage was empty except for 3 other agency vehicles. Torres pulled into a space near the elevator. Garrett stepped out first, opened the rear door, and pulled Mr. Jones from the vehicle with more force than necessary. They rode the elevator to the 3rd floor in silence. The booking area was quiet, Thursday afternoon, most detainees already processed and transferred. A single desk sergeant sat behind bulletproof glass, reviewing paperwork. Garrett walked Mr. Jones to the intake desk and dropped a file folder on the counter. Michael Raymond Jones. Obstruction of federal officers, interference with lawful detention, endangerment through noncompliance. He locked us out of a school bus for 6 minutes while we were attempting to execute an immigration enforcement action. The desk sergeant looked up slowly. His name tag read Coleman. He was in his late 50s, gray-haired, with the weathered face of someone who had seen 30 years of people being processed through this room. He looked at the file, then at Mr. Jones, then back at Garrett. "You arrested a school bus driver?" He refused federal orders and locked the vehicle, trapping 42 children inside while we were attempting to detain a subject. Coleman's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. He opened the file and scanned the incident report. His finger stopped on a detail. "You forced breach on a school bus? On an active highway. The driver refused to comply. Did you have a warrant?" Garrett's jaw tightened. "We don't need a warrant for administrative immigration enforcement." Coleman looked at Mr. Jones again, this time with something closer to recognition. He had seen this driver before. Not in this building, never in this building, but somewhere else. Community meetings, maybe. School board hearings. Veteran outreach events where bus drivers volunteered their time. He reached for his phone and dialed an internal extension. "This is Coleman at intake. I need supervisor review on a detention. Priority." He paused, listening. "Because we just arrested a 61-year-old school bus driver for asking federal agents to show a warrant before boarding a vehicle full of children." Garrett's face reddened. "Sergeant, we have clear authority under." Coleman raised one hand, cutting him off. "And I need the Bodycam footage pulled immediately. All units involved. I want it preserved and uploaded before anything else happens." Garrett stared at him. "The footage is evidence in an ongoing investigation." "Exactly. So I want it secured properly. Time-stamped. Chain of custody documented. Because if this goes the way I think it's going to go, everyone's going to want to see exactly what happened on that highway." Torres, still standing near the elevator, pulled out his own phone and saw the view count had passed 23 million. The comments were running 10-1 against the agents. Phrases like terrorizing children and abuse of power were trending. A legal analyst on cable news was already breaking down the lack of warrant requirement versus the operational discretion to avoid traumatizing minors. The story was no longer controlled by threats or authority. It was controlled by video, and the video showed exactly what it showed. Coleman looked at Mr. Jones directly. "Sir, have you been read your rights?" Mr. Jones nodded once. "Do you understand the charges?" Another nod. "Do you need medical attention?" A slight shake of the head. Coleman turned back to Garrett. "Uncuff him and put him in interview room 3. Supervisor will be here in 5 minutes, and we're going to review this whole thing before anyone gets booked." Garrett opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He had already made enough decisions today. He unlocked the cuffs. Mr. Jones rubbed his wrists but said nothing. As they led him toward the interview room, Coleman made another call. This one went to the district attorney's office. The conversation was brief and pointed. When he hung up, he looked at the incident report one more time, at the description of a bus driver who had locked doors to protect children, and shook his head slowly. The supervisor arrived 6 minutes later. She reviewed the footage in real time, the highway confrontation, the megaphone threats, the forced breach, the crying children. When it finished, she looked at Garrett with an expression that suggested his career had just taken a trajectory he would spend years trying to reverse. "Release him," she said quietly. "Ma'am," he obstructed. "Release him. Now." Mr. Jones walked out of the federal building 90 minutes after being brought in. No charges filed. No booking completed. No formal detention recorded. But the video had already done its work. By the time he reached the street where his daughter waited to drive him home, the view count had surpassed 40 million, and the federal prosecutor's office had received 200 calls demanding accountability. The real trial would begin 3 weeks later, and the revelation waiting in a yellowed newspaper clipping would transform everything anyone thought they understood about the invisible man who drove Route 12. The federal courthouse in downtown Dallas had not seen this level of attention in over a decade. Satellite trucks lined Commerce Street. Camera crews staked positions on the marble steps hours before dawn. Security checkpoints extended 2 blocks in every direction as crowds gathered behind police barricades, some holding signs supporting Mr. Jones, others demanding federal authority be respected. The gallery filled 90 minutes before proceedings began. Parents from Route 12 occupied the first 3 rows. Teachers sat behind them. Bus drivers arrived in uniform, taking personal days to witness what many saw as a referendum on their own invisible labor. Strangers who had watched the footage and driven across state lines filled the remaining seats. Standing room only by 8:30 a.m. Mr. Raymond Jones entered through a side door at 8:55, accompanied by his court-appointed attorney, Sarah Mitchell, a public defender in her early 40s who had handled the case for 3 weeks with the grim determination of someone defending the obviously right against the technically complicated. He wore the same blue button-down shirt and gray slacks he had worn to parent-teacher conferences for 14 years. No tie, no suit jacket. Just the quiet dignity of someone who had never needed costume to command respect. Judge Ellen Vasquez entered at precisely 9 a.m. She was 52, appointed to the federal bench 7 years earlier, known for procedural precision and intolerance for theatrical grandstanding from either side. She settled into her chair, adjusted her reading glasses, and surveyed the packed courtroom with an expression that revealed nothing. The charges were read aloud by the clerk. Obstruction of federal officers in the execution of their duties. Interference with lawful immigration detention. Endangerment of minors through noncompliance with federal authority. Each count carried potential prison time. Each word landed heavy in the silence that followed. The prosecution began with Agent Marcus Garrett. He took the stand in full dress uniform, badge polished to mirror shine, posture military straight. The federal prosecutor, James Hendricks, led him through the events methodically. The intelligence that identified the subject, the operational planning, the approach to the vehicle, the repeated lawful orders, the driver's refusal, the forced breach necessitated by obstruction. Then they played the audio. Garrett's voice boomed through the courtroom speakers, amplified and harsh. "Federal agents, open this door immediately. We have a lawful detention order for a passenger on this vehicle." Mr. Jones' voice came through calm and measured. "I need to see a warrant before anyone boards this bus. This is not a warrant situation. You are obstructing federal officers. I have 42 children on this bus. Show me the warrant." The recording played for 6 full minutes. The gallery sat in uncomfortable silence as they heard the escalation, the threats, the pounding on doors, the crying children in the background, the forced breach, the screams. When it ended, Hendricks asked Garrett to explain his operational decisions. Garrett leaned forward, addressing Judge Vasquez directly. "Your Honor, we were executing a lawful immigration detention based on verified intelligence. The driver refused repeated direct orders from federal law enforcement. He created a dangerous situation on an active highway by sealing the vehicle and refusing access. His actions endangered those children far more than our presence ever could have." Hendricks nodded. "In your professional opinion, Was the breach necessary? Absolutely. The driver had made it clear he would not comply. We had a subject to detain. Waiting would have allowed potential flight risk or interference from arriving civilians. The breach was the only option to complete our mission and secure the minor. No further questions. Mitchell stood for cross-examination. She was shorter than Garrett by 8 inches, wearing a suit that had seen better days, carrying a tablet and a folder of printed photographs. When she spoke, her voice carried quiet precision. Agent Garrett, you testified this was a lawful detention. Did you have a warrant signed by a judge? We don't need warrants for administrative immigration enforcement. That wasn't my question. Did you have a warrant? No. Did you have any documentation authorizing detention of a specific minor from a specific vehicle? We had intelligence. Yes or no, Agent Garrett? Silence. No. Mitchell tapped her tablet and turned it toward the witness stand. This is dash cam footage from exactly 47 seconds after you approached the bus. Where are your hands in this image? Garrett stared at the screen. His hand was clearly resting on his holstered weapon. Standard officer safety posture. You drew your weapon on a school bus? I did not draw. My hand was positioned on your weapon while approaching 42 children. Yes or no? Yes. Mitchell pulled up another image. The bus surrounded by agents, traffic stopped in both directions, helicopters overhead. Agent Garrett, is this what immigration enforcement normally looks like? We adapt to circumstances. How many school buses have you stopped on active highways during your 11-year career? Garrett's jaw tightened. This was the first. The first. And instead of coordinating with school administration, with family services, with any agency designed to handle minors with care and discretion, you chose to create a tactical scene during rush hour traffic. Why? The subject could have been removed from the bus at any stop. We needed to act immediately. The subject is a 10-year-old child on a fixed route with scheduled stops. Where exactly did you think he would flee to? No response. Mitchell played another clip. Garrett screaming through the megaphone. You're protecting an illegal. A kid who doesn't belong here. She paused it. Is that how federal agents are trained to refer to children? I was attempting to make the driver understand the seriousness. You called a 10-year-old an illegal, on camera, while surrounded by other children. Is that professional conduct? Garrett said nothing. Let me ask you something else, Agent Garrett. In those 6 minutes, did you ever consider coordinating with school officials? Did you ever consider waiting for the bus to reach its destination? Did you ever consider the emotional impact on 42 children of watching armed federal agents force open their only exit? The silence stretched. We were executing our duties. That's not an answer. Mitchell turned to Judge Vasquez. No further questions. Do you think Mr. Jones did the right thing protecting the kids even if it risked his job? The law is complicated, but sometimes the right choice is simple. Type protect if you agree, and share the story so more people understand what happened on that highway. The second agent testified next, corroborating Garrett's version. Then the tactical specialist who operated the breach tool described the forced entry in technical detail, emphasizing the necessity and the restraint shown. Then the defense called its witnesses. Emma Chen's mother took the stand first, her voice shaking as she described her daughter's nightmares, waking up screaming about men with guns, refusing to ride the bus, panic attacks triggered by the sight of black SUVs. She's 11 years old, the mother said, tears streaming. She doesn't understand why those men were so angry. She just knows Mr. Jones was trying to keep her safe. A traffic safety expert testified about the dangers of armed confrontations on active highways, presenting statistics on civilian casualties during roadside operations and protocols most agencies followed to avoid exactly this type of situation. Miguel's aunt described a quiet boy who now flinched at loud noises, who asked every morning if the agents were coming back, who couldn't sleep without his bedroom light on. The school principal read a prepared statement about Mr. Jones' 14-year record. 0 incidents, 0 complaints, countless unpaid hours. A driver who had once navigated through a flash flood to get children home safely, who remembered every child's name, who had reported suspected abuse that led to a child's removal from danger. 6 parents testified in total. Each described the same man. Someone who waited when children were late, who kept emergency supplies on the bus, who had called them personally when their children seemed upset or sick. One father broke down completely. "My son has autism. Loud noises, strangers, unexpected changes, they trigger him." Mr. Jones learned his routine in the first week. Same parking spot, same greeting, same everything. "When my son had a meltdown last year and tried to run off the bus, Mr. Jones didn't yell or grab him. He just sat down on the curb and waited until my son felt safe enough to sit next to him. 20 minutes they sat there until I arrived. That's who this man is." The gallery was silent except for scattered crying. Then Mitchell introduced the bus's security system logs. The district had upgraded 6 months earlier, new cameras, cloud backup, automatic upload triggered by emergency protocols. The moment Mr. Jones activated the master lock, every camera feed had uploaded to secure servers with timestamps and GPS coordinates. The footage played on the courtroom monitors. The calm driver, the screaming agents, the threats, the breach, the children's fear. Every moment documented from multiple angles with perfect clarity. When it finished, Judge Vasquez removed her glasses and set them on the bench. She did not consult notes. She did not request closing arguments. She looked directly at Agent Garrett, still seated in the gallery, and began to speak. "I have presided over federal cases for 7 years. I have seen measured law enforcement and reckless law enforcement. What I watched on that highway was not measured." Garrett's expression remained rigid, but his hands clenched. "You had intelligence about a child attending school, following a routine, posing no flight risk. Instead of coordinating with appropriate agencies, you created a tactical situation on a crowded highway during rush hour. You surrounded a bus full of children with armed agents. You screamed threats through a megaphone. And when a driver doing exactly what every parent in this room would pray their child's driver would do asked for legal documentation, you responded with force." Judge Vasquez turned to Mr. Jones. "This man is not a criminal. He saw a dangerous situation escalating and chose to protect the children in his care. He asked for legal authority. He remained calm under pressure. He did not threaten, escalate, or endanger anyone." She picked up her gavel. "All charges are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am formally commending Mr. Raymond Jones for exemplary conduct in the protection of minors. This court condemns the operational decisions that made his intervention necessary." The gallery erupted. Judge Vasquez raised her voice. "Agent Garrett, I suggest you and your team take this case back to your supervisors and have a serious conversation about protocols involving children." Garrett stood slowly, his face rigid. The agents followed him out through the main doors as applause built, as cameras flashed, as judgment followed them into the hallway. The ovation continued, swelling into sustained thunder. But before it could peak, Mr. Jones stood. He reached into his jacket with deliberate slowness and withdrew a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges, creased from years of careful storage. He walked past his attorney's confused expression, past the bailiff's uncertain pause, and placed it directly on Judge Vasquez's bench. The applause faltered. Confusion rippled through the gallery. Judge Vasquez looked down at the clipping, a newspaper fragment from September 1997. The headline read, "Driver Saves Child in Highway Accident." Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The photograph showed a younger man in a bus driver's uniform, soot-streaked and exhausted, carrying a small child wrapped in an emergency blanket. Behind them, a bus lay on its side, smoke rising from twisted metal. Judge Vasquez stared at the image, at the child's face, at the driver's determined expression. Her face went pale. She had been that child. The courtroom had gone completely silent. 200 people holding their breath. Cameras forgotten. Phones lowered. Every eye fixed on Judge Ellen Vasquez as she held the yellowed newspaper clipping in trembling hands. The photograph was faded but clear. September 14, 1997. A charter bus carrying elementary students on a field trip had lost control on rain-slick Interstate 35, the same stretch of highway where Mr. Jones had been stopped 26 years later. The vehicle had flipped twice, coming to rest on its side with windows shattered and fuel leaking from a ruptured line. The driver had pulled 7 children from the wreckage before smoke became flame. The last child, an 8-year-old girl trapped beneath twisted metal, had required the driver to crawl back inside the burning vehicle, pry open a window frame with his bare hands, and carry her out on his back through a corridor of fire. Judge Vasquez had been that child. And Mr. Raymond Jones, the invisible bus driver everyone had overlooked for 14 years, had been the man who saved her life. The article beneath the photograph provided details she had never known. The driver's name had appeared only once in the 3rd paragraph. His age at the time 35. A quote from the fire marshal who arrived minutes after the rescue. Another 60 seconds and that bus would have been an inferno. This man saved that child's life. No question. There were other details. How the driver had refused medical attention to stay with the injured children until their parents arrived. How he had visited the hospital twice but never left his name. How the city had tried to present him with a medal at a ceremony he never attended. The honor eventually filed away in municipal storage and forgotten. Judge Vasquez looked up from the clipping. Her eyes met Mr. Jones across the bench. Recognition and memory and gratitude crashed together in her expression. Her voice, when she finally spoke, came fractured and raw. All this time, I never knew. I never connected. Mr. Jones simply nodded once. A small, economical gesture that contained everything and nothing. Acknowledgement without expectation. The gallery erupted. The standing ovation shook the walls. People stood on chairs. The bailiff abandoned protocol to applaud. The court reporter was crying openly. Parents embraced. Bus drivers in uniform saluted. Strangers who had driven across state lines to witness this moment found themselves weeping for reasons they couldn't fully articulate. The sound followed Mr. Jones as he turned and walked toward the exit. It followed him down the aisle, through the doors, into the marble hallway where court staff joined in, where attorneys handling other cases stopped mid-conversation to add their voices. It echoed down corridors as he descended the main staircase, past security checkpoints, out into the October sunlight where the gathered crowd erupted into fresh cheers at the sight of him. He did not wave. He did not pause for interviews. Camera crews shouted questions he did not answer. Reporters thrust microphones he did not acknowledge. He simply walked to the parking garage where his daughter waited, got into her car, and let her drive him home. Behind him, the courthouse remained in chaos. Judge Vasquez sat at the bench long after the gallery cleared, holding the newspaper clipping, reading the article repeatedly, discovering details her childhood memory had not captured. The medal she had never known about. The hospital visits she didn't remember. The quiet refusal of recognition that had defined this man's entire life. She placed the clipping in her personal files and drafted a letter to the White House that evening, recommending the Presidential Citizens Medal not as symbolic gesture but as overdue recognition of decades of quiet heroism that had been ignored until a highway confrontation forced the world to finally pay attention. The video had been climbing steadily for 3 weeks. The highway footage. The courtroom dismissal. The legal analysts debating warrant requirements and operational discretion. But the revelation, the yellowed clipping, the judge's emotional recognition, the 26-year connection between a saved child and the man who saved her, sent it into a different stratosphere entirely. By midnight, the combined clips surpassed 180 million views. The narrative people shared was not about immigration policy or federal authority. It was simpler and more human than that. A bus driver everyone ignored had protected children from escalation, then walked into court and revealed he had been doing that same thing. Protecting people, saving lives, for decades without anyone noticing. The responses came from everywhere. Parents tagged their children's bus drivers with messages of gratitude. Teachers shared the footage in staff meetings, sparking conversations about invisible workers who made schools function. Former students of Mr. Jones' various routes over the years, now adults scattered across the country, posted their own memories. A woman in Seattle remembered how Mr. Jones had waited 45 minutes past his shift when her mother's car broke down, never complaining, never requesting overtime. A man in Houston recalled being bullied on the bus in middle school, and how Mr. Jones had quietly rearranged seating to separate him from tormentors without making a scene that would have made things worse. A teacher in Austin posted about the time Mr. Jones noticed bruises on a student's arms and reported it to administration, leading to an investigation that removed the child from an abusive home, something the driver never mentioned to anyone, discovered only when the teacher searched old records. The pattern emerged clearly. 14 years of small heroisms no one had seen. 14 years of choosing the hard right thing when the easy wrong thing was available. 14 years of being invisible while doing visible good. The settlement negotiations began within 48 hours of the courtroom revelation. The federal government, facing public outrage and indefensible footage, moved quickly to contain damage. The school district's insurance carrier authorized maximum payout to avoid prolonged litigation. The city's legal team worked to separate municipal liability from federal operational decisions. Mr. Jones' attorney pushed for public transparency, policy reform, and a settlement number that would send a message. The government pushed for confidentiality. Mr. Jones refused. "If this gets buried behind an NDA," he told Mitchell in her cramped office, "it happens again to someone else. Someone without cameras. Someone who doesn't know how to stay calm. Someone who gets hurt." The final settlement was reached 6 weeks after the courthouse revelation. $525,000. Public admission that the operational approach had been flawed. Mandatory training reform across all ICE field offices regarding contact with educational transportation and protocols for situations involving minors. Policy requiring supervisor approval before any immigration enforcement action on school property or school vehicles. Agent Marcus Garrett was reassigned to administrative duties pending internal review. Within 3 months, he would resign rather than face formal discipline. His law enforcement career, 11 years of service, ended not with ceremony but with a viral video that would follow him permanently. The Presidential Citizens Medal ceremony took place 4 months later. Mr. Jones stood in the East Room of the White House wearing the same blue button-down shirt, surrounded by politicians and dignitaries who wanted photographs with the bus driver who had become a national symbol. He shook hands with the president, posed for official portraits, gave a brief statement thanking the children of Route 12 for trusting him with their safety. Then he returned to Dallas and went back to driving. The sun was setting over Interstate 35 when his shift ended on his first day back. Mr. Jones guided the empty bus toward the depot, checking mirrors, maintaining proper following distance, executing the same careful procedures that had defined his career. Miguel Reyes had been reunited with his family through proper legal channels. His case handled quietly by immigration attorneys who worked pro bono after seeing the footage. He rode Route 12 again, sitting in row 8, sometimes talking with Emma, sometimes just looking out the window. The other children boarded differently now. Slower, more deliberately. They made eye contact instead of rushing past. They said good morning. They said thank you when they got off. The girl who always sat in front brought him drawings. The boy with autism's father wrote a letter that Mr. Jones kept in his glove box. Parents waved from pickup points with genuine recognition. A billboard company had donated space along Interstate 35. A simple message thanking Dallas bus drivers with Mr. Jones' employee photo beneath it. He drove past it twice daily and never once looked up at it. The depot was quiet when he pulled into his assigned space at 5:47 p.m. He completed his post-trip inspection with the same methodical attention he had shown for 14 years. Checked the emergency exits. Noted the fuel level. Logged the mileage. Tomorrow he would do it again. And the day after. And the day after that, the world had finally looked up and discovered what had been there all along. Not spectacle or drama or viral sensation, but the steady presence of someone who simply refused to look away when it would have been easier to comply. Someone who understood that real power lies not in the authority to command but in the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The bus engine ticked as it cooled in the evening air. Mr. Jones locked the doors one final time, turned off the lights, and walked toward the parking lot where his daughter waited to drive him home through gathering darkness. Behind him, the bus sat silent, waiting for morning, waiting for the next route, waiting for the next group of children who needed someone to get them home safely. The work would continue. It always had. It always would. And Mr. Jones would be there doing it quietly, the way he always had, whether anyone was watching or not.
If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it, and let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.